Hello, everybody. It's me, Gus Johnson, back again for part two of the Paul Stretch thing that I started last week or 2 weeks ago. I kind of lost track of time, what with marching band and everything. So today, last time I showed you all just the basics of what I did with Paul Stretch, how I took an audio sample from Sibelius. I exported some audio from a track. I used my Audacity to Paul stretch it and add a little bit of reverb and effect to that. And then that was pretty much it. This time what I want to do is show you how I figured out mathematically how to compose along with my Paul stretch as a background synth. The track I'm using today is called Young Ent, and it was part of my competition entry for the Young Composers Forum that I'm a part of. Here it is in Audacity. I'll play you just 30 seconds or so you can get an idea of what we're after today. Get this out of the way so I can adjust the volume. Here we go. Okay. I'll show you the rest later, but you can see here we have my Paul stretched area. Here I have the electric piano that I composed, and then also the drum set that I composed. These two tracks are there for editing purposes. I had to add them in afterwards because I had some issues with the audio that I exported, and I just kind of ghetto rigged it. So that's what we have. We've got 1, the Paul stretch, 2, the electric piano, and 3, the drum set. Those two I composed, this one I composed and then stretched, and had to figure out how to notate it to compose along with it. So I'm going to walk you through that process. Let's start out. Here is the final version of the score. You'll see it's in 4/4, our quarter note's 90. And if you take a closer look, here are my instruments. You see the electric piano part written there, the drum set part written there, and here is the Paul stretched instruments that I have. We've got Paul stretched woodwinds, Paul stretched brass, Paul stretched choir, and Paul stretched strings. Sorry about the appearance of the score. I cut this out of the full score so it looks a little bit Yankee. Deal with it. I have to too. So anyway, what you do to get this product with the dynamics and everything in there is you start out with something much shorter. Here I have basically 8 measures plus a hold. 8 measures plus a hold. And this is what is the basis for that composition. I started out with a chord progression. I wrote out just a simple harmonic progression that I wanted to do, and I wrote it in a very quicker time and with shorter note duration. If I pull up the playback, the transport, you'll see that, okay, so it's supposed to equal 90. Let's see if we can get that set to 90. 88, close enough. So what you do, I know that I'm going to stretch all of these things to be 8 times longer than they are, because when I put it into my Paul stretch in Audacity, I'm going to choose my option 8 for stretch factor. That means that my whole note, now instead of being 1 whole note, will be 8 whole notes. And this first quarter note, instead of being 1 quarter note, will now be 8 quarter notes, which is the same as 2 whole notes. And the 16th note will now be 8 16th notes, which is the same as a half note. Using that mathematically, I can figure out how I will compose on top, or there's a much easier way. What I do is select everything, and Sibelius has a function called double or half. And once you've got all the dynamics written in there and have everything the way you need it, what you'll do is you'll select the double option. If you do that once, it becomes twice as long. If you do that twice, it becomes 4 times as long. If you do it 3 times, which is what I did, it becomes 8 times as long, and you end up with the note durations you'll need for the finished piece. So that's how you get the notation for it. But to get the audio stretched out the way you need to be, what you do is you export this as is at the desired tempo for your other recording. So I've set my tempo to 90. It's actually 88 right now, but I've already done this, so I'm just going to leave it there because it's close as I can get. Oh no, I can actually put that in. So here we go. Text, metronome mark. 100 equals 90. There we go. Now we'll get a playback equal to 90. When I export it at this tempo, I'll get an audio. So let's do this. File, export audio, and I'm just going to export it as this young ent demo, and I'm going to save it elsewhere. Oops, wrong spot. Fluid motion. And this would be where I export it. You see the chosen folder already contains a file with the chosen name. That's because I've already exported it because I prepared in advance. Yay! Export it with a high bit rate and as high a sample rate as you can manage with your computer, because when you slow it down by 8, a factor of 8, it'll really get kind of goofy if the sounds aren't great. So let's pull up a blank Audacity and check out. So here's that file that I exported. Drag it over into Audacity. It's going to make a copy for me. So here we have it. So you get the idea. That's it at the normal tempo. Let's amplify it first to make it a little bit louder. I'll do 5. Just kind of give it a boost. Actually, no. Let's make it a little bigger than that. That'll work. It clips a little bit, but I'm okay with it clipping once or twice. That's fine with me. Next, go to the beginning, generate some silence so that we have some room to work with. I'm going to make it 5 seconds. And now, effect, paulstretch. Told you I was going to do it by a factor of 8. And keep in mind that we will anticipate our original sound by half of a second. I'll show you what that means once we get the paulstretch finished. Let's not preview, let's just go straight to it. Working on the paulstretch. So what we've done now is we've taken this original quicker, shorter duration version and created it into something that actually matches this duration. Using that, I can compose on top knowing that this is when my things are lining up and that's what's happening at what time. And that's basically the process that I used to create this this track as well as 2 others within my composition entry. Looks like it's finished, and cut out some of this stuff. Let's take a listen. It's a little bit treble heavy, so I'm gonna change the bass and treble a little bit. You see, this is the setting I used actually for last time, so we'll go ahead and apply it. It's a much different sound once you've done the paulstretch at a factor of 8. There we go, that's much better. So that's the process I got to get that paulstretched audio. How am I doing on time so far? So good. That's great. Once I got the audio and got everything, like I said, I used the double feature within Sibelius to get me the correct notation. I pasted it into my score and composed on top of that. It was pretty simple. The only thing that remained for me to do, pull up, this is the actual audio file I submitted, was to do a little bit of editing. So if I zoom in here, and let's expand this so that you can see, you'll notice that there's not a hard silence in there anymore like there is in the track I just showed you. I added some effects, some reverb, but I also did some cutting in terms of our sound. I got rid of some silence. I shifted things around. So it's not a perfect science, and you will have to work with it a little bit once you export all the tracks together. I've exported the Paul stretch. Once I compose my original my piano stuff and my drum set to go on top of that, I export those individually so that I can adjust those individually. Let's shrink that. So here we have my piano. I've done some editing to the volume, you'll see there, just to keep it from clipping as much. But that's just minor stuff. Again, the same thing with the drum set. Okay, let's expand those again and fit. So here's the whole audio track as it is. I'll post a link to a better recording of it because I know that this microphone doesn't do a great job. But let me know what you think of the techniques, if there's anything I can improve, or if this makes you excited, or what else you want to know. My plan for part 3 and the final part is to show how and why I do the orchestration things that I do with the woodwinds and brass and strings and choir, why I use them the way I do. So that means I get to play around with that. Yay! Looking forward to that. Here we have Young Ent. Take a listen. Let me know. There's some things that need some work in here. Okay, so that's the technique I used. Let me know what you think. Sorry it was a long 15 minutes, but hopefully that was educational. Thank you very much. Bye. Pause button. Beep.